first one that came up through all the interviews was economic drivers. So the lack of access to economic opportunity as being a key factor in a young person's decision to join an armed group. That was particularly the case for young people inside Syria, less so for young people inside refugee communities because it costs money to go from Lebanon to Syria or from Turkey to Syria to fight. But definitely inside Syria, young people just don't have any other option. The second factor was to do with the context. So obviously we're in a situation of conflict inside Syria and a very, very brutal conflict at that. Young people's experiences of that conflict, of seeing people killed, of particularly seeing family members killed, was by a lot of the respondents felt to be a major issue that causes young people to join armed groups, including extremist groups. The third area that we've identified as driving young people to join extremist groups was what we're calling the kind of deprivation of personal needs or psychological needs. And those are needs that we all have as human beings, so the need to belong somewhere, the need to have a sense of purpose, the need to have control over your surroundings. And when in wartime, obviously a lot of that is taken away from you, particularly for young people. This came up a lot in Lebanon, for young people in refugee communities there, where refugees are facing very difficult kind of stigma attached to them by the host communities. And the attraction to joining an armed group like ISIS or al-Nusra that will give you a sense of purpose, so you're building an Islamic State or overthrowing the Assad regime, is extremely powerful for those young people. The final factor was the collapse of the education system inside Syria. So the lack of access to schooling and what that means for you as a young person in terms of how you see your future and hope for the future. But also the removal of those networks that being part of an education system gives you, the access to alternative mentors, the teachers act as, and the fact that armed groups often come in to fill that gap. So armed groups themselves are offering education, and obviously it's ideological education. So that's what young people are exposed to, and there's often no alternative. According to the research, ideology was more of a secondary factor. It wasn't a primary factor for somebody joining an armed group. It's more of a way of framing the decision to join an armed group.